It's Wednesday, November 18th, 1987, and a supervisor at the Rend Lake water treatment plant is standing there looking at the clock and then looking at the phone. One of his workers, Keith Dardeen, hasn't shown up yet. That's already strange, because Keith isn't the kind of guy who just doesn't turn up. He's reliable to the point where people notice if he's 5 minutes late. So the supervisor picks up the phone and calls Keith's house. It rings and rings. There's no answering machine, which isn't unusual for the time, but the silence on the other end feels heavier the longer it goes on. No one answers. So he tries again. Same thing. At this point, it's not panic yet, but it's uncomfortable. Enough that the supervisor decides to call Keith's parents, Don and Joanne, just to see if they've heard from him. They haven't. Now there's a real problem. Deputies are sent out to the trailer where Keith lives with his wife, Elaine, and their 2-year-old son, Peter. The trailer is just off Route 37, nothing fancy, just a small home in a quiet area where people don't expect trouble. When the deputies arrive, there's no sign that anybody broke in. But inside the trailer, it feels wrong, and when they reach the bedroom, they find something so violent that even experienced officers are shaken. Elaine is there, Peter is there, and under blankets they find a newborn baby girl. Elaine was 7 months pregnant. The attack was so brutal that she went into labor during it. All three were killed with Peter's own small baseball bat. The injuries are extreme, and the scene is one that later becomes infamous because even years later, major TV shows refuse to describe it on air. But one person isn't there, Keith. And the family's red Plymouth is missing too. For the next day, people in town start whispering that maybe Keith snapped and killed his family. Police even post guards at Joanne Dardeen's house just in case Keith shows up. But then, the next day, hunters find Keith's body in a wheat field about a mile away. He's been shot 3 times in the head. And then, investigators notice something shocking. Keith's body has been mutilated in a very specific way. His genitals were removed. Now it's obvious Keith didn't do this. Someone killed his family, took him with them, and then killed him somewhere else. And suddenly, the biggest question becomes how this even happened in the first place. To understand why this case still bothers people, it helps to know what the Dardeens were like before that morning. Keith was 29. Elaine was 30. They moved into that trailer in 1986 because they wanted a simpler, quieter life. They were involved in church. They played music together in the Baptist church ensemble. They were careful, polite, the kind of couple people describe as nice without having to think about it. But Keith wasn't clueless. In the 2 years leading up to the murders, there had been around 15 killings across nearby counties. Keith became cautious. He locked doors. He paid attention. Just weeks before the murders, a strange woman came to the trailer asking to use the phone. Keith refused to let her inside. He was trying to protect his family. Elaine was pregnant, and they were already planning names. Ian if it was a boy, Casey if it was a girl. They talked about the future like people do when they think they still have plenty of time. Because of the violence in the area, they decided to sell the trailer. A for sale sign went up in the yard. Some investigators later wonder if that sign was what drew the killer in. Someone driving by, seeing an isolated home with a young family, and deciding to stop. For years, there are no real answers. Then, in 2000, a man named Tommy Lynn Sells starts confessing to murders from prison in Texas. He's already known as a drifter and a violent offender, and he talks a lot. Eventually, he claims he killed the Dardeen family. At first, police don't buy it. Sells is known for inserting himself into cases, but then he mentions details that weren't public. The duct tape, the fact that a baby was born during the attack, things only the killer should know. But his story keeps changing. In one version, he claims Keith invited him into the trailer for a sexual encounter. Joanne Dardeen knows instantly that's not true. It feels like he's trying to smear Keith after death. Sells famously says, "Rage don't have a stop button." But even with all the disturbing details, he's never charged in the Dardeen case. He's executed in 2014 for other murders, and the Dardeens are left without justice. Joanne Dardeen is now in her 70s. She still gives interviews, she still tells the story, not because she wants attention, but because she doesn't want people to forget her son, her daughter-in-law, and her grandchildren. The trailer is gone now, but the question of who walked through that door and why is still unanswered. A few years later, another case begins, and it's just as haunting. This time, it's Ohio. In October 1989, 10-year-old Amy Mihaljevic disappears from a shopping center in Bay Village. It's a place where kids walk around alone. Parents don't think twice. It's safe. Or at least it feels safe. Witnesses see Amy talking to a man. She doesn't look scared. She looks comfortable, like she trusts him. And then she's gone. For 3 months, there's nothing. No sightings, no calls, no real leads. Then, in February 1990, someone walking through a field in Ashland County spots something in the tall grass. It's Amy. She's more than 50 miles from where she disappeared. The case changes instantly. Amy was a 5th grader. She liked animals. She liked drawing. She lived in a neighborhood where people didn't lock their doors at night. Her father, Mark Mihaljevic, never stops pushing for answers. He calls detectives magicians, not as a joke, but because he believes they're doing something impossible by refusing to give up. For 35 years, investigators work this case, literally every day. They get around 300 tips a year, emails, phone calls, people who still think about Amy when they see her picture. There is a suspect early on, a man with a gold Oldsmobile seen near where her body was found. 2 witnesses even pick him out of a photo lineup, but there's no physical evidence tying him to the crime. The case stalls, years pass, technology changes. For decades, investigators have slides of what they believe are fibers from Amy's clothing. They're logged, stored, checked again and again. Then, years later, a lab in California looks at them using newer tools, and they realize something important. These aren't fibers, they're hairs, male hairs. DNA testing finally reveals a male DNA profile on Amy's sweatpants, evidence so small it wasn't even recognized for what it was when the case began. Now, investigators are waiting. They're hoping that DNA will finally lead to a name. Every year there's a memorial walk for Amy. People still show up. People still remember. What do you think happened? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there.